I want to talk to you guys today about the U.S. intervention in Syria and the potential solutions to the crisis that's going on. So, the lingering question today is what methods of intervention should the U.S. use to resolve the civil war that's going on currently in Syria? So, throughout history, there have been several uses of intervention by several different countries to resolve conflict, and they fall into two separate categories: the use of force and interacting peacefully. And there's also the option of non intervention, but we're assuming that the US is going to intervene, so we're not going to cover that area. So, the first option to look at is training a group of Syrian rebels. So, essentially, what this means is to send US military force into Syria in order to train the opposition and fight for us. So, this is beneficial for us because we won't have to be directly involved with the conflict. However, there is a little bit of backdraw. In terms of economics, it's going to cost around $500 million to send troops over there, and there's the potential threat that we train the wrong people and put the weapons in the wrong hands, similar to what we did with Al Qaeda in the 1980s. So, the next option is to send troops into Syria. So, this is essentially what it sounds like. You're sending troops into Syria in order to combat the issue. So, there's two different types of troops that you can send. You can send coalition troops, which works peacefully with other nations in order to protect the well-being of the citizens of Syria. And there's the use of American military, which is attacking the problem with force directly. So a little bit of the setbacks with the coalition troops is they're not going to resolve the issue immediately. It's going to take time, and they're more protecting the citizens rather than solving the problem. Whereas with American military, the troops could resolve the problem quicker and protect the citizens at the risk of potential casualties that happen. So the next option is military airstrikes. Now I'm going to ask you guys a rhetorical question. If you guys were Russia and I was the US and I decided to bomb an area and I accidentally killed Russian soldiers, how would you guys feel? Which is exactly why using airstrikes is not necessarily the best course of action. So this is not a method that the US would want to use because there's too many negatives that come out of this. So there's just going to be too many lives lost, and there's the potential that the wrong lives could be lost, which creates tension with the US. So airstrikes, no bueno. So the next is a no-fly zone implementation. So this is essentially putting restrictions on Russian and Syrian aircrafts from flying over the site of crisis. Now, what this could do is create tension between Russia and Syria and the United States. So, because we're putting restrictions on their aircraft, so like who are we to tell them what to do? However, this will restrict the amount of aerial threats over the Syrian crisis. So, we don't have to worry about bombs dropping and etc. So the last measure is diplomatic measures. So this essentially is sending American officials into Syria to talk to Syrian officials in order to resolve the conflict peacefully. Now, this is like a form of peaceful intervention. And this is either a hit or a miss. You can either reach a consensus and you can resolve the issue peacefully, and that's really, really good. But more times than less, there's not going to be a consensus reach, which would just be a waste of time, essentially. So this would not be too efficient of a measure. So ethical dimensions of this intervention is that throughout time, the views on intervention have changed drastically since the 1980s and the spread of Al Qaeda, because prior to that, there wasn't a need to protect humanitarian concerns throughout the world. So by rationalizing intervention with humanitarian concerns, it's a good way to go in and protect the well-being of citizens. So our group resolution was that we're going to send American military forces into Syria to combat the threat directly. And this is the best course of action because we're resolving the issue as quickly as possible, and we're protecting the lives of the innocent Syrian civilians at the cost of potential casualties. But that's given with any war. So it's the best option. It's the best suited for this case. And in terms of tridimensional ethics of our resolution, we have the intent is to end the conflict in Syria as quickly as possible. Our means is to send ground forces, American ground forces, to fight and attack the problem directly. And potential consequences is violence is removed from the region and civilians are in less harm. However, conflict could arise with nations that are involved with the crisis directly, so Russia, for example. And here are a list of my sources. And do you guys have any questions?
How are you going to handle the public's response to ground troops going in after everything with the war on terror?
Okay, so handling the Americans' viewpoints on sending troops. So that's a good question. We need to rationalize it in a way that it explains to the American public that this is an issue that we need to resolve because the spread of terrorism is a real threat in the country, and we need to contain that as best as possible because we already have the threat of ISIS, and if we eliminate all the threats in Syria, we could have some hybrid of ISIS that spreads from that. So now we have to worry about 2 terrorist groups, then 3 terrorist groups. So if we attack the issue at the source, then we have the potential of taking care of ISIS as well as other potential threats. And as long as we help out Syria and they feel comfortable with us helping out with them, and we do successfully resolve the issue, then Syria can potentially become an ally to the U.S., and the more people who like the U.S., the less the terrorists are going to, the potential terrorists are going to attack. All right, any other questions?
It's really good.
All right, thank you.